Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Photography 101. Same thing as before, we're going to take a look at some of your photography. I'm going to pass off some tips, some tricks, some general suggestions of how to improve your photographs, whether that's before you even take the picture, thinking about composition or post-production, color balance, things you can do to kind of spice up the photograph afterwards, whether that's in Photoshop or Paint or whatever program that you want to use. In this episode, I'm going to be using Lightroom. That is primarily the program that I use. Sometimes I use Photoshop to do some after work, but Lightroom is my go-to program. It's not cheap, obviously, but you can sign up for, I think it's this photography level subscription through Adobe that gets you Photoshop and Lightroom, maybe. I think it's $29.99. I can't remember exactly, but I mean, if you're interested in checking out both of those programs for $29 a month, there's a lot of value there. So if you don't have any experience in Lightroom, then this might not be totally applicable to you because I'm going to be using some of the tools within Lightroom. But if you think about getting Lightroom in the future, maybe you can kind of come back to this video and check it out. But we're going to take a look at, like I said, your photos here. So we've got Alex, Andrew, Bradley, Bryce, Carson, Eric, and R. Owen. So a couple of people here. I think there's roughly 20 to 25 photos to get through. So we're going to try and get through them as quickly as possible, but also spend the right amount of time on each. Let's start out with Andrew's, and I'll bring him up here on the screen. Okay, so I mean, this is pretty cool because we get to start with an actual hockey photograph first. So the first thing I noticed is things aren't level. We look at the bottom of the sign here hanging. We look at the railing in the background. So if we do this, we make it straight or straight-ish. We also have to look at other places around the photo where there could be lines that could give us hints of if it's straight or not. So right now I'm kind of looking here, and I was also looking over here for this one. So I feel like this is basically straight. So that's the first thing that we want to do. If we kind of go back to that thing, yeah, so I'm not sure if it's exactly 100% straight, but anyways, for me personally, I don't like square orientation photos. So I either want to come down or I want to come up to make it a little bit more 6x4 or 16x9 or something like that. So there's not really anything going down on there's not really anything interesting going on in the ice in this general area. So I'm probably going to bring this up to about here and leave it at that. Now, from an editing perspective, to fix color or anything like that, there's not really a lot to be done here. You could add some contrasts, maybe bring down the highlights a little bit, but this is a JPEG. You can already see the degradation and the artifacting going on. You could increase the exposure a little bit. From a photography perspective, it's not a bad shot, but what is the interest here? When you take a photograph, think about what the interest is. Is it the big sign that's hanging up here? Well, probably not, because that's cut in half. Well, there's also another sign up here that's kind of interesting, but that's also cut in half a little bit. Is it the ice? Well, it probably is the ice, but there's not really anything going on in the ice. So I think your subject is everything as a whole, but the fact that you have some things cut off and you're off to a side and angle, maybe you couldn't get right dead on. But if you're taking, especially architecture, symmetry is usually extremely important. So I would say take 10 steps to the left, line up everything completely perfectly, so you're right in the dead center of the ice, or you're looking up the dead center of the ice, and just stage everything so there's balance on every side. Right now you're shooting at an angle, so it kind of loses the viewer or the perspective a little bit. Let's move on to the next one. So we've got a zoomed in. Sorry, I don't know why those are all zoomed out. Why is it? Sorry, that's better. Okay, sorry. So I think this is Calgary? Maybe it's not Calgary. Anyways, it's a nice landscape photo here. It's a shame that this branch is here. It is it's quite distracting. So I want to lose it, but at the same time I don't, because that bridge is really cool. But I am going to lose it. I would totally crop all of that out. These stairs kind of tell a story, so I'd like to keep those in. So maybe I'll bring this down, keep the horizon on a third, and then we'll level the horizon. We always want to level the horizon. So some cool things happening here. You got buildings in the background, foreground, which tells a story. There's a girl down here standing, which is interesting. She's looking out at almost the same view. Obviously, you're higher. Let's add a little bit of contrast, a little bit of shadow, maybe some saturation a little bit, or some vibrance. So this, you can see the sky is quite blown out, and we want to bring that back a little bit. So we'll use our trusty linear gradient filter, and we'll add some contrast. We'll bring down the exposure a little bit, and we're going to click at the top, hold the shift, and drag down. Now we can move that, and we'll place it here, and then we can play with the sliders a little bit more and trying to get what we are looking for. So I think we add a bunch of contrasts, maybe like this. Yeah, it's a JPEG, so it's really hard to kind of make something of nothing when all the information's lost from it being overexposed. It's hard to bring it back. So let's just bring it at that, and then we're going to increase the exposure back up a little bit. So again, I would just suggest maybe think about the distracting elements, whether it's a branch or half of a building or half of a sign. Think about where those things are as you're composing the photo, even before you take the photo. And yeah, otherwise it's nice. I like it's telling an interesting story. It's a nice view. Okay, so for this one, this is what I would say like front of newspaper kind of shot. It tells a story, but at the same time, it's just kind of a snapshot. From a photography perspective, it's just a generic kind of like street photography shot. The truck is kind of cut off there, so I'd maybe completely eliminate it and maybe kind of bring this down. I really want the story to be about the bus, not the buildings. So now we have a story about the bus. It's going somewhere, and maybe add some contrast, some warmth. Maybe from a photography perspective, there's not really anything too amazing here. I don't really mean that in a negative way, or I'm not trying to insult you or anything like that. This is a newspaper shot. This is a shot that would go in the front of a newspaper to tell a story about, you know, the ETS or wherever this is, Edmonton. What is it? Edmonton Transit Service. So I mean, this could even be black and white or something. Who knows? It's not a bad shot. There we go. Let's move on to who's Andrew's next. Andrew's got some shots for us. Ah, nice. New York City. So kind of the thing with was it Alex's photos before. He had that branch coming in. This rock down here I find quite eye-catching in a bad way. So I'm just going to go boom. If we just do that, I think that helps a lot. And we'll bring it down just a little bit more. I think you nailed the horizon. Yeah, I think you nailed the horizon there. So I love the sky. The sky is really cool. We're gonna bring out that sky. So we're gonna use again the trusty linear gradient filter. Add some contrast. Bring down the exposure. Add even more contrast. Bring this way down. We're gonna maybe make it a little bit more gradual. And maybe we could add some, oh, not yet. Let's get out of that. Let's add some saturation. It's a little cool, so we're gonna warm it up just a little bit. Maybe add some more contrast. And I'm gonna try and boost the shadows here to bring out the buildings. We don't wanna go too much. Bring down the highlights a little bit. I'm gonna bring the brightness up. Feel like it's a little cool, so we're going to warm it up just a bit. Again, JPEG, so it's difficult when the color balance isn't right in the sky. So if we go back to our gradient filter, click on the dot that we've already applied, we can kind of change the color of the sky itself if we want. I see some green in there, which isn't really possible. So we could kind of push it to the purples a little bit. Or we could, like I see some colorization in here that I don't like. We could come down here to the HLS slider panel and just take out all the aqua or the green. We don't want to take out the blue because that's in the sky. But I mean, there's all kinds of things you could do here to kind of play around with it. I noticed that the left-hand side of the photo is a little bit darker, so we can actually come in here and make a new gradient slider hollowed out, and I just increase the exposure so it kind of matches the rest of the photo. So if we do it before and after, so it was a little flat, it lacks some detail in some of the parts. So we brought out more detail in the sky. I mean, the colorization in the sky is exaggerated. I did that on purpose just to show you guys what you can do. But you just kind of, giving it a little bit more life. Next up, okay, Statue of Liberty. So it's right on the brink of there's too much information, too much detail, and not enough information. So you either want it to be silhouette or you want it to, you want to see all the detail. I think I would prefer to see straight up silhouette. So if you bump the contrast hardcore like that, we're going to get a basically full silhouette. We know it's the Statue of Liberty. We could even add some clarity to exaggerate it a little bit, maybe some vibrance. And I want to lose the crane in the background. I like the water, so maybe we'll kind of do something like maybe like this. Bring her in kind of on a third. Maybe something like that. It's again JPEG, so it's a little difficult, but yeah, something like that. It's a neat photo. Silhouettes are something that's difficult to do correctly, and he did a good job here. Ooh, next up, this is cool. So the first thing I noticed actually wasn't the bridge; it was this. It's always those distracting elements. So we can remove that super easily. Boom. Just by cropping down a little bit. This is really cool. I almost feel like it's a little bit, we're seeing a little bit too much information. I really want that story to come out and flow through almost to the other side, the bridge. So we're going to crop in all the way, I think, to there. And we're really going to bring this down pretty much all the way because there's not really anything happening in the sky. Actually, we'll move the bottom up a little bit. And yeah, actually, maybe we won't. Maybe we'll bring it all the way down because I don't want the horizon to be in the middle. Maybe something like this. Now we have a foreground. We have a background. We could add. I think there's enough contrast in the foreground, but I don't think there's enough contrast in the background. So what I want to do is again use that linear gradient filter and come in at an angle this time to match the angle of the bushes. We're going to come all the way down, and you're not going to see any changes because I haven't done anything yet. But we're going to slide the contrast slider all the way over. We'll bring down the exposure, not too much, and we're just going to play with the angle of this a little bit. We'll make it a little bit more sharp of a transition. We'll bring it right down to there, and then we'll back off on the contrast. We'll kind of bring it back and just see where we're at. Just going to play around something like there maybe, and it's a little cool, so I might warm it up just a bit. So I'm happy with where it is now, but I'm going to exit that. I think there's a little bit too much yellow or warmth in the photo, and I don't want to adjust the color balance because I think it's close. So I might just come in here to the HLS slider and then just kind of take maybe 30% of the yellow out, and that might have been too much. Something like there, because I'm going to boost the color again with the vibrance. We don't want to go too much. See, there's almost there's a haze or something happening right there. So I might actually come in with another gradient filter, linear gradient filter, bump the contrast again, and kind of come down like this, and really just go pretty much all the way with that contrast. Maybe bump the vibrance a little bit to get more color in the sky and the bridge. Maybe kind of bring down the shadows to remove some of that haze again on the bridge. And now I'm going to kind of bump the exposure of the entire photograph a little bit. I feel like it's a little dark. Something like there. So before, after, didn't really do a lot. I just kind of tried to remove as much haze or as lack of contrast as there was in the photo. Now the color balance is off. There's a little bit too much green around. But anyways, pretty cool shot. I really like that one. Next up. Ooh, nice. So the first thing I noticed was the horizon's not straight. So we want to fix that a little bit. And we can use this area here to judge our horizon. So that was an easy fix. Now I can decide whether I want to lose the sky or lose the water. There's not really anything going on in the sky, so I kind of want to lose the water. I'm kind of trying to get away from that square orientation. So let's do this. The water is really interesting as well, and I think actually I didn't get the horizon straight, so something like that. So add some contrast, I think, a little bit. Maybe some warmth, something like that. That looks fairly realistic, I think, and I think I want to add some contrast again to this photo, kind of like the last one. So we might come down, bring exposure down a little bit, and just add a little bit more contrast in those mountains and hills. Something like that, I guess. We got quite a bit of overexposure happening here. So, but anyways, it's nice photograph. Next, so from a photography perspective, this is quite degraded. There's lack of detail all kind of along here. It almost looks like it was taken with like an older style cell phone. Nothing wrong with that, but if you wanted to print this out or anything, you're going to notice some pixelation and stuff. So again, there's not much this is a really nice photograph, first of all. I might do this. I love how the plane's on a third. I don't mind the trees cut off here. It actually adds some bit of balance with the arena or stadium, whatever that is. Might bring this up just a little bit, and I'm going to use the linear gradient filter again. Add some contrast, lower the exposure, and come up from the bottom because I want to hide that guardrail. I don't really want to see that. So we're going to make this pretty gradual, I think. Something like this, and we're really going to come down with the exposure. Whoa. Calm down, Bessie. It might be too much, but I need to zoom out to see this properly. Yeah, something like that. It's a nice half silhouette photo. I love the sky. Next, again, maybe some JPEG degradation happening here. There's not much I can do with this photo as far as editing. Beautiful rainbow, that's awesome, but it's a little warm or something up above. So we can fix it a little bit. We're losing a lot of information detail down here. We want to see the fans, so we can boost the shadows a little bit, but I can't really do anything editing wise with this. But again, I would say stay away from the square orientation. The last photo. So okay, we're back in New York, kind of near the same area actually. This was taken, I believe, handheld. I can see some movement in some of the lights and stuff. Any nighttime shots, if you can leave your camera on like a post or a tripod, bring a tripod. That's definitely the first recommendation I'd make. You can get some awesome long exposure shots. And if you don't know what that is, then I'll do a video specifically on that in the future. But if you just shot this handheld, it's still not too bad. I'm just going to straighten it up a little bit and add some contrast. So this looks like it was taken, I was going to say maybe the fall, but I can't really tell. Maybe it was summer. For night shots, I mean, if you're all night shots kind of look the same unless you go above and beyond and do the long exposure and kind of create something that's really unique. So there's not really anything I can do here other than, give you the suggestion of maybe use a tripod next time if you have a DSLR and you can do a long exposure. Next up, Bradley. Let's see what Bradley's got. Oh, more New York City. So again, super easy fix here. Just see that little branch or leaf. We just want to remove that like that. This is a cool perspective shot. I think if you add a lot of contrast, bring up the exposure, the color balance isn't right. We're kind of getting a green tinge from some of the lights down here. The clouds are, there's colors from all over the city kind of bouncing off the clouds back down at you. I think this is a candidate for a possible black and white photo. Punch in a lot of contrast, maybe a ton of clarity. I will blur out the shadows a little bit and the highlights. Something like that. Like that's, and so we're getting some artifacting or some noise going on, but something like that's very like super contrasty, almost in your face kind of architecture, and it almost like it plays with your mind a little bit. I struggle with kind of artsy stuff like this. I'm very, follow the rules kind of person when it comes to photography. So I like seeing stuff like this, because if it was me, maybe I'd follow the rules and I'd do it everything straight and everything. So this is a good example of kind of thinking outside the box, and it's still looking pretty good. So good job here. Okay, so NYC, very low quality photo here as far as size, so I can't really do anything. But again, kind of like with the previous night shot for the last person's photos, if you took a long exposure, and I think you're on top of either the Empire State, yeah, I think you're on top of the Empire State Building here. If you set this on a poster or a railing or something, or a tripod, when you take a long exposure, these clouds won't be defined. They'll be kind of like swoopy or misty a little bit, and that kind of adds a lot to a nighttime photo. So bring a tripod. Next, again, a very low quality photo. Not a lot I can do here. We could straighten it up, the horizon a little bit, add some contrast, maybe bring up the shadows, bring down the highlights. We've got, see how this dark up here on the right but lighter here because of the position of the sun? We can fix that by using, again, the linear gradient filter, kind of bringing it down like this from the opposite angle, and something like that. So just be aware of your sky, the way that the vignette happens sometimes through a lens, or it appears like it's vignetted from the lens, but it's really just the way that the sun is in the sky and the shadows. So just try and be aware of that and mirror it the best you can in post. Ooh, nice hockey shot here. This is a difficult thing to shoot. I would really just qualify this as kind of a snapshot, not really photography, just because it's square and it's very low quality. It looks like it may be a cell phone, so I'm going to move on. Kind of the same thing, like these, I guess all these shots are kind of fairly low quality. So if you guys can send me some higher quality photos as far as like megapixels or size, this looks like it might be out of focus too. I can't really do a lot editing wise with these ones, but I'll definitely give you some tips photography wise. So this looks to be the 9/11 memorial, I believe. So those lights are really cool down there. Interesting photo. The lights come through a third on both sides and kind of loop in around the middle there, which is neat. The next one, I believe, is Madison Square Garden. So the ceiling is awesome. The ice is awesome. The seats are awesome. But this edge here, I might just kind of get rid of that. Something like that. Bring it up. Maybe bring this down some. I don't know. Something like that. Next up, again, I can't really do anything with this photo. I tripod and DSLR. A phone photograph of this is just going to look like basically every other phone photograph. So if you have a DSLR, definitely use it if you can. Bryce is up next. He's got one photo for us, and ooh, yeah. All right, nice. This is a very spooky, misty, mysterious photo. I like this. Black and white. This is cool. That's awesome. Very misty, ominous. Nice. Yeah, I don't know if I'd even really change a lot here. I feel like it's a bit soft up here. I don't know if you added some negative clarity. See, when I add negative clarity, it makes it a little bit more misty. So if you did do that, I think you did the right amount, first of all, but I'd just be careful of not to use too much negative clarity, because when you do, it starts to look very bad. So I think you had it the right way. I think it was a really good decision to make this black and white, because there was probably a lot of fighting colors in here. So good job there. And yeah, really, I mean, this is a nice photo. I might remove this branch thing up here using the what's this called? Spot removal tool. That was easy. Yeah, I mean, to fix the orientation a bit, I might just kind of do this. But yeah, I mean, that's a really cool spooky photograph. Thank you for sharing that one. I really like that one. Carson, let's take a look at your photos. This looks like California maybe. So a nice street shot here. This is I actually really like this one. You have the streets coming through on the left hand side and swooping through a third, going into the middle and kind of leading your eye through another third. This has really, really good leading lines. The side of the road, the lines in the road, and then this red one on the other side. So this is pretty cool. I might even kind of bring it in even more, right along that tree line there. Maybe if it plays around with there. Something like that, maybe. I wanted to lose that branch up there. It was kind of bugging me, but yeah, I like that. I love the leading lines in this one. Well done. Ooh, a nice car. So, kind of like in some of the previous episodes, think about your angle. Right now, you are looking at this. Basically, I think you're maybe going down a little bit, but think about how you want that car, or what kind of emotion you want that car to give people. This is a very fast, in-your-face, intimidating vehicle. Make it bigger than give it the personality that it already has, but exaggerate it a little bit. Get right down on the floor and make it look big. Make it look like it's coming over top of you. Give it that kind of over-the-top personality that it already has and exaggerate that. So don't be afraid to get down low when you're shooting cars. That's something that really helps them stand out quite a bit. Because right now, it kind of almost looks like you're looking at it from a human perspective. Next up, I wouldn't consider this to be a photography or really a photograph. I mean, it's a photograph, but this is kind of just a snapshot for me. This looks like an AMG 63 or whatever the hell it is. Doesn't matter. But this looks like a paparazzi shot or something. I would just say a snapshot. Ooh, look at this. Nice. That's cool. So LA Kings facing the Dallas Stars, I believe. They're in the background. That's Tyler Seguin right there. Nice. See all these silhouetted people here? I think that's the coolest part of the whole photo for me. They're not quite silhouetted though, so if we actually bring down our shadows a little bit like that, add some contrast, those all become silhouetted. And I think they tell a little bit better of a story that way. And from a cropping perspective, I mean, I might just bring this down here. The lights are cool. Yeah, it's a neat shot. Next up, so I mean, hockey's really hard to photograph even when you have the right camera and you're on the glass, because you have to deal with lighting and stuff. So this isn't real. I wouldn't consider this to be photography. This is just kind of a snapshot. I mean, you're shooting through glass and the net and stuff. It's not your fault. It's just this is the way she goes. This one, kind of the same thing. It looks like they're playing musical chairs a little bit. Let me see if I can. They're kind of like following the circle of musical chairs in front of Jonathan Quick. Again, kind of a snapshot, not really I wouldn't consider this to be photography, because you're sitting in the stands. You have a very typical viewpoint of any other fan. So, again, not your fault. Eric is up next. He's provided one photo. This is nice. Cool. I love the leading lines here. First thing I noticed. That's awesome. I think you're crooked, though. Still a hair. There, we fixed that. Yeah, the leading line's kind of coming in. It almost lacks a bit of symmetry, though. I don't really want to lose all that other side, but if we kind of make this totally symmetrical, kind of coming up through on both sides into a third like this is a really, really good example of leading lines. Colors are nice, and maybe a little bit too much contrast. If we back off the contrast a little bit, add some vibrance. Yeah, something like that. Really nice fall, colorful photo. Good job. And next up, R.Own. He or she has submitted one photograph. Kind of a low quality photo here, but kind of a cool photo. This is, again, ominous, spooky. There's some mist on the water. If I add some contrast, we get that get rid of that a little bit, but we don't want to get rid of too much of it because it's good. It's a good thing. I think this is a good candidate for a black and white photo. We can add some more contrast, maybe some clarity, make this almost spooky. So let's look at all the degradation that's happening here. So this is the unfortunate part about editing some of these photos, because original RAW or original JPEG is ideal. But this is not too bad. Watch your horizon in the middle, though. You don't want to be totally in the middle, and it's not. I'm just playing around. Just want to see. That's part of what this is. You just play around and see what works. I think it's something like that, maybe. We don't want that boat right in the middle. We almost want it to be right on a third, kind of like this. So it's a cool photo. It's nice. I think if you made it black and white from original, I might not have even changed anything. So nice job, good job, R. Owen. I don't know if you're a guy or girl, but thank you for contributing, and thank you, Alex, Andrew, Bradley, Bryce, Carson, and Eric. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. I have, I think, 40 to 45 people to photographs to go through. So there's going to be lots more of these episodes. If you have contributed or you've emailed me your photos, I have them. I am preparing to do them. It's going to take a while to get through them, so I hope you have some patience. But thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. This is so much fun for me to see other people's work and to kind of pass off a few little tips. And I'll be editing some more of my photos coming up on the channel too. So if you could subscribe, I would love that. That would be awesome. Leave your feedback. Let me know the favorite photos that you saw in this episode. Hope you guys have an awesome day, and I'll catch you in the next one. Adios.